Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this week's call. I am really excited. I actually didn't meet them yet, but I was introduced to Jess Robertson and Stephen Robertson out at WPPI. They had an awesome Photographers Ignite talk. For those of you guys that aren't familiar with Photographers Ignite, you can actually see their talk on that website today. I'll add the link in the description below. But you get 5 minutes, 20 slides, right, guys?
Yeah.
20 slides, 5 minutes, then the slides automatically advance. And I'm way in the back of the room. And there were some good talks here and there. And all of a sudden, this came on, and I saw the business canvas come up. I was like, oh my gosh, who are these guys? I'm like Googling rapidly in the back of the room. Like, I cannot wait to get these people on. I knew instantly, within the first 2 minutes, that I was going to have you guys on the other side of our interview. So thank you so much. Welcome to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what Tog Tools is and what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Jess, like you said, and
I'm Steven.
and we started Tog Tools last year. We are photographers ourselves. We've been in the business for almost 5 years, and we noticed pretty quickly that photographers were coming and going. Very, very quickly. And we wanted to do something about it. And so we were kind of doing stuff on a smaller scale. We had a mastermind group where we would meet and talk with a smaller group of photographers and do things. And people kept coming to us with their business questions and asking, well, how did you do this? And how did you do that?
Right.
And so we had this idea to do this book called First Year Photographer. And as we were kind of mapping out the book for First Year Photographer, it turned into this whole huge business idea for Tog Tools.
Yeah.
So we launched that, and we're doing interviews with professional photographers and courses. And
Yeah.
we'll let you
It just
expand.
really sucks because a lot of the people we kind of came into the industry with are gone.
Right.
Like that blows. Like, what's going on there? Like, we got to do something about that. It's a big problem. And what we realized through some research, it had to do with business.
Yeah.
I mean, you can love shooting, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, it's great to be phenomenal at the craft. I don't discount the craft at all. But like, the art of business is something that photographers need to really consider as they are growing their businesses.
Totally. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. Today's call, guys, we're gonna run through a kind of a teaser of some of the stuff they shared in their talk. We're gonna talk about the photographer's business model canvas. It is when I saw you guys, the way you've applied this to the world of photography, I was like, oh my God, how come I didn't think of this sooner? So some additional context. The business canvas is a concept that's not specific to photography. It's
Nope.
a trending thing that's becoming increasingly popular across all ranges of businesses. And the more I've become exposed to it in starting sticky albums and in becoming immersed in the world of like online startups and running a business myself, it has been an invaluable tool. And I think the same thing can be I can share in my experience in the last 2 years of really getting into the startup like culture and scene. There's so many people that struggle with some of the similar things that people struggle with in photography, and it's getting like focusing so much energy on stuff that doesn't matter yet, and all the things that are easier and safer to think about or focus on when you like writing a 30-page business plan. I don't think we don't really run that risk very much in the photography business. Like just getting them to write one page.
Right.
Like as photographers myself, I never wrote a plan. I had no idea what I was doing.
Post-it note.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm just going to go take pictures and then I'll figure the rest out later. But this is such a helpful like framework and foundation to just force yourself for just a little bit of time to think about your passion, your art as a business. So let's dive right in and just kind of work our way through what the canvas is and how photographers are using it to help them grow their business.
Absolutely, yeah. The photographer's business model canvas, we we hate to say photographer's business model canvas 20,000 times, so we call it the PBMC. It just rings a little bit better than photographer's business model canvas.
Right on.
But the business model canvas, like you were talking about, really was instrumental in our business early on, but we had to kind of change it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it didn't really, it worked, but it had language that we just didn't really kind of connect with and that kind of thing.
Right on.
And we saw that Alexander and Eve, they actually, the originators of the business model canvas, they released it under Creative Commons.
Nice.
And so that gave us the opportunity to adapt it for our own purposes. And we wanted to share this instrumental tool with the rest of the community, because it's been amazing in our business, because essentially what you want to do is business is not necessarily some mysterious thing that only a select few and
Right.
in the world will ever hope to achieve.
Uh-huh.
It's really like jumping off the cliff and experimenting with different things to figure out what works in kind of a somewhat non-linear, somewhat linear way.
Right.
And the photographer's business model canvas is a great experimentation tool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really its strength. Is you may start off, filling out the PBMC if you're like in your first year,
Uh-huh.
and it may look a particular way,
Uh-huh.
but as you iterate your business and you grow in how you consider solving problems for your clients, that tool, the PBMC, can be instrumental in helping you kind of get a 30,000 foot view and say, if I tweak this part of my business model canvas, what happens to this over here?
Yep.
And how does that change my revenue structures and so on and so forth? And I
think the big thing too is, obviously as artists, you mentioned the 30-page business plan, and that was like our whole thing when we got started.
What the
Was
heck?
like we couldn't even imagine doing that, so we were on cloud 9 when we saw this.
Yeah, totally.
And so our whole thing is, as an artist, like, we get art, we get like that kind of stuff. So this is something that we encourage photographers to like hang on their wall.
Yeah.
Put near their computer or make their desktop on there.
Totally. Because as soon as you put anything on paper, it starts becoming less and less valuable. Like as soon as it's like written, it becomes less and less accurate, right? And so why spend so much time on something that's so long? And when you're making a guess, I think you touched on something so accurate, is that any business is like it's a hypothesis, right? I'm making a guess that this is a problem we're solving, and I'm doing it in a way that people are going to pay me to solve it.
Right.
That's my guess, and this is how I'm going to reach my client. All these answers to the questions here. Oh yeah, I'm so glad I just remembered this analogy. It's one of my favorites. It just kind of dawned on me. Starting a business is like trying to point a laser at the moon. Mm-hmm. And we put so much energy into building everything out and building this really expensive laser, right? And writing the 30-page plan or buying all this gear, doing all of this stuff, all to find out that we're only a couple degrees off. It doesn't matter. If your goal is to point a laser at the moon and you miss the moon, close doesn't matter, right? If you're off, you've missed. And so the better idea is to do something simple and to make sure you're aiming correctly at the moon, simple and cheap, with this very simple business canvas. And then once you've got it, you're aligned right with something, then you pull apart the pieces and keep testing it all along the way. One other analogy I thought of first was, do you guys ever laugh? Like, some people will eat the food on their plate like one item at a time. Like if you've got potatoes, veggies, and a meat, like some people will eat all of it one at a time. Others will take one bite of each and then go around the table like clockwise. How quirky you want to get, right? I see the PBMC. Sorry, I'm learning.
No, it takes practice.
I see that similarly, where I would really recommend for people first watching this. So if you haven't noticed, we've got a screenshot, a JPEG you can follow along with throughout today's call. Take a look at this, and I think that there's so much value in taking it super high level, right? Just go through and spend a minute or two thinking about in your mind, like, what are the answers to some of these questions to make sure you've addressed all of these things. And then you can spend a whole lot of time in each one section.
Yeah.
Once you've built out this bigger picture, it gives you a really good place to say, okay, where should I focus my energy next?
Yeah. Nate, you're right on the money. I mean, we talk to a lot of photographers and we ask them questions like, why do your clients book you?
Right.
And there's, oftentimes it's a puzzled look, like, because I'm me,
Right.
and that's not true.
Yep.
I love you. You're amazing. You look beautiful, but that's not true.
Yep.
The truth is they have a problem.
Yeah.
Why is it that they're coming to you to book you?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
really understanding the motivations behind the interactions, the business transactions that are happening in your business.
Right.
Like, being able to really filter out to the nitty gritty and almost codify that enables you to exponentially,
Yep.
compound that effect.
Totally. So let's pause here. So I want a couple points, and we'll keep it really simple. So one, to be clear, guys, this is equally valuable for somebody who's just starting out or somebody who's been in business for years, right? And
Absolutely.
This is something that's even if you've done it a year ago, it's a living document. It's something you should always be coming back to.
Yeah.
That's the next point, and I think let's dig into. I think the first one is the most. Like, what problem am I solving? I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for creatives to hear, is that they're solving a problem, right? They're like, well, I'm just creating art. It's like, no.
It's the hardest one to answer.
It's a really
honestly.
difficult
It's
one. So you guys explain for us, like, what do you mean by that? How do photographers solve problems?
Sure.
Absolutely.
You want to take it?
No, go ahead.
I think that when
Awesome.
the idea that that photographers, they get into the game and they're like, I want to capture light, or specifically if they're like a portrait or a wedding photographer, maybe they're a senior photographer, whatever it is.
Yep.
They get into it because they love being able to capture the moment and to really like engage with people and that kind of thing, and they love photography. It's this emotional thing, and it takes quite a bit of time and oftentimes years to even get to the point where you're like, what problem am I actually solving in my business? And we think that there's no point in wasting all that time. Let's ask the question once you pick up a camera with the intention of starting a business.
Right.
What problem are you solving? And the answer rather is not going to be static.
Right.
It's going to be dynamic with your business.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, some of these examples might be, what problem am I solving? If I'm a wedding photographer, the problem is very clear. This moment where I say I do, if I'm your client, is never going to happen again. I don't get married with the intention of getting divorced.
Right.
I'm not like collecting marriages,
Right.
Through life.
Totally.
I'm literally, this is it,
Yep.
This is it. So this is what I'm saying. What problem are you solving? Find out what the core elements are of those problems, because then you can really start to use language in your marketing materials and how you are interacting in pre-booking sessions with your potential clients, and really find those trigger points that help them understand you get it. You understand exactly where they're coming from and what their pain points really are, because everybody has pain points.
Right.
I don't care if these pain points are beautiful images that I'm looking for. It's a pain point. A pain point is, I would be devastated if I didn't have imagery of this amazing day. So
Totally. Yes. And let me try and see if you guys help me along. If I'm a wedding photographer, some other problems I'm solving are like, it's their first time. Typically, it's their first time going through this experience.
Yep.
They don't know what they don't know.
Yep.
There's a lot of like fear of this. I know I want pictures. I know I want this moment captured forever, but I have no idea how it can be captured.
Right.
And the things that can be created is like, what kind of prints do I want? Am I supposed to ask the question, do you guys like give away the DVD or the CD? Because my friend said I'm supposed to ask that question.
Yep.
Like, the clients don't know. So as a photographer, one of the problems you solve is educating your client. and holding their hand and providing the service to be the trusted advisor and walk them through this experience, something that they've never gone through before.
Yeah.
And making sure that they found somebody they can trust, right? Finding somebody they can trust to walk through this experience with them.
And another big thing for us too, like for our wedding clients, and this is a huge thing that people love about us, is the organization. I'm very much like type A personality, like very organized. So I create a timeline for the day. I create a timeline for the day for them. And so as much, kind of hand in hand with like the education is like the organization, because most brides, there are some that are like super chill and laid back and they could care less. But most brides want to know like when things are going to happen and what order stuff's supposed to go in and that kind of stuff, and being able to have that. So that's one of the things on our list.
And that's really what you do is you ask yourself that question, what problem?
We didn't have that.
What problem am I solving? And as you move through all the different potential answers, you will really start to refine exactly what problems you are solving. Right. And Nate, you mentioned the education. The education really it is a part of what problem am I solving? What are my solutions? What's uniquely me? All of that is wrapped up. Why my clients book me is all wrapped up in that education piece that you just mentioned. That's so phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
It's so good. So thinking about going back to like just getting over that original hurdle of thinking about your business as a business. I think as photographers, it's important for us to know the difference between like a painkiller and a vitamin. So if you're selling a vitamin, there's no urgency, right? And I think as photographers, it's safer for us. Why don't we? Let's go right to the heart of the matter. Like, why is it hard for artists and photographers to take time to do a canvas like this? Well, because as soon as you doing our art, it's vulnerable. Like in essence, being an artist, you have to put yourself out there in a very vulnerable way. And so when you start talking about your art in a very tangible, objective, black and white way, it really exposes some of the risk we're taking in being artists.
Yeah.
And when you say, well, so I found for myself when I first started doing it as a business, it was like, oh yeah, I'm glad you like it. Well, I won't charge for this. I'll do this session fee for free. I'll waive that. That's fine. And then you just buy, I'll put them online. You just buy whatever images you like whatever you like. Because I'm just giving you a vitamin, right? Whereas, because I wasn't confident enough in I wasn't owning the fact that I was actually solving a problem, or that I could solve more problems than just taking somebody's picture, right? Because guess what? Picture taking is going by the wayside. Like everybody takes pictures. That's no big deal. You're not solving a problem in a unique way anymore. You've got to do a whole lot more and get to the heart of the real pain, like you guys were saying, is I don't know what to expect. It's going to be chaos. I'm afraid I'm going to hire somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. Like there's all of these other things that go into it, and you have to, as a photographer, really, I think, own up to how awesome you can be and the problems, the fact that you do have the potential, and you probably already are solving problems. You're just not conscious of it yet.
Yeah.
I think too, it's funny because we meet people who've been in business, 3-4 years, and they still have a hard time when people ask them what they do.
Right.
Saying, I'm a photographer.
Right.
Like, I'm an artist, I'm a photographer. And so, I mean, even something as simple as, like when you mentioned confidence, like that's a huge part of it. Yep. And you also mentioned the vulnerability. We recently were talking to someone in an interview, Nicole.
Yeah.
And we were talking specifically about women and why, women tend to struggle with this a little bit more. And, she mentioned that like a lot of the women that are getting into the industry are moms who've picked up a camera and started taking pictures of their children. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, do this and can you come do this and take pictures of my kids? And so you have this very kind of emotional tie because your love for photography started with your own kids.
Yes, it's very
And so
personal.
it's like
Yeah.
having to separate that from, again, the business side. So I think there's a lot of different things that potentially,
Yep.
play into that. But
With the transition into digital, I think it's worth mentioning. There's this idea that whenever digital enters, a market, for instance, like music,
CDs.
it made the access to make music. It reduced that barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the same for photography.
Right.
And in the early days of digital, it looked like dookie. It was not even pretty. Everybody was still sticking with film. But as the maturity came about with digital, it became like that barrier to entry just dropped through the floor. And now anybody can pick up a camera, including their iPhone,
Right.
and call themselves a photographer. So we're looking at this tension of being a commodity now.
Right.
We're simply like there's so many photographers, and I use that term lightly because everybody thinks that to some degree they're a photographer. But
Yep.
here's the tension is fighting back on that tension of being a commodity is simply by standing up and saying, this is me, this is my art, this is exactly what I do in my business, this is what I've chosen to create in my business that is unique about my business, that is not a commodity. You cannot get this anywhere else.
Which,
Right.
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And understanding all of those variables from a broader perspective and understanding how they interact with your revenue model, how much things cost in your business, understanding like at the end of the month, I'm gonna have an extra $3,500 that I didn't have 3 months ago because I've been tweaking and experimenting with my business model.
So,
Yeah, I think you touched on a good point, and I've navigated this myself. Coming in as I was starting to be a photographer, a lot of the research and all the learning I was doing, I heard a lot of this. People were really sometimes angry about how many people were flooding the industry, right?
yeah.
I've got a very attitude to business. I think that there's an abundance of demand and work out there for people who are crystal clear on what they offer and what they can do, right? And so the other piece is that back to confidence is when being able to say, you know what, I do solve this problem. I don't just what's the way to say it? Like, okay, here it is. When you say, I have a clear goal to solve this problem or to actually turn this into a business. It used to be a passion when I was just taking pictures of my kids. But now when I say, I want to do this and make money, that's a hard goal to really make outwardly, right? Where it's so much safer to say, well, if people hire me, then whatever. Then that's fine. But what's more important is I'm just going to do this as for fun. And if that's what you want to do, then just do that. But there's this huge potential for, I think, so many photographers who are navigating the early stages of their career. Am I going to quit the day job? Am I going to still do the day job? How much of my time do I want to dedicate to being a photographer? Like all of these questions are part of what you need to answer in making this decision to really run it as a business.
Yeah.
And I get that it's scary, right? It's so much more scary to when you make a clear goal and say, I want to make this much money with my photography this year. That's black and white. Like if you don't achieve that, like there's a failure that's associated that is really tricky when you start combining that with your art. And it's not. There's no easy answers to it. But I think by using tools like this to gradually ease into, you know what? Yes, aren't we lucky that we get to do our art and get paid for it? There's so many artists that don't. And if you don't ever want to get paid for your art, fine. I'm not judging that either. But if you've decided that you're going to invest this much time of your energy following your art and your passion, why not do it in a way where you can make really good money?
I want to touch. You mentioned the fear thing, and I kind
Yeah.
of want to touch on that a little bit and
Yep.
have Stephen expand on it because he gets really excited about that part of the canvas. This was something that we actually added later.
Yeah.
This wasn't there when we initially created the canvas,
I'm afraid
and
of. Yeah.
we added it later because we realized that it plays a huge role in starting a business, especially as photographers, we're usually alone.
Yep.
We're not starting a business with, even a small group of, 5, 10 people as a startup.
Yep.
So fear is very difficult thing to deal with, but I'll let
Yeah.
you kind of,
No,
because you like to speak
To your
on that.
point, I think that when you look at big major corporations, and the fear element is really not part of the day-to-day culture. I mean, it's just they understand how they're going to make money. It's
Right.
more, it's just kind of locked down. When you're out there swinging in the wind by yourself, you're a solopreneur, and you have so many things in your head about what could go wrong.
Yep.
I mean, you're trying to, maybe it's a side hustle. Maybe photography is a side hustle, and you're working as an accountant or whatever it is, and you want to make your passion a full-time thing, and yet there are so many things that you're just, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and so on and so forth. The fear, you need to be listening to that fear and running towards it. Fear is right now for us because we don't have to run away from tigers and and do kind of crazy stuff like that. We've more or less got that nailed down. The fear that we're feeling is something we need to pay attention to and lean into. We need to move toward that fear because it's telling us, this is something that we're really wanting deep in our souls, and to not engage in that, to kind of lean back and kind of try something else that I'm not so scared of.
Yep.
You're
Yeah, and finding a way
If
to
we're
voice
always
it.
avoiding the things we're afraid of,
yeah.
that's you're not going to end up accomplishing much. I think I've heard Seth Godin echo some of the same sentiments. I think you
Absolutely.
summed it up really, really well. The concept of leaning into your fear is tremendous, and leaning into, for me, if I'm going to be totally honest, for me, some big aha moments for the success in my career was being honest with myself about success. I was afraid of, what if this works?
Yeah.
What if my wildest dreams come true? What does that mean? That means I'm really going to have to follow through on this. That means I'm really going to, that's a really big promise to make to a lot of people. I'm going to have to follow through on it. I'm going to have to work a lot harder, a lot more. All of these underlying things that was letting hold me back. When you just put it on paper and say, what am I afraid of? What are the silly ones? What are the real ones? And what's the heart of the matter? Are you really just afraid of your greatest potential and what that looks like? And what are people around you going to say? Are you still going to be friends with some of the people when you become 10x successful in whatever you're doing? That means sometimes relationships don't endure that kind of change, right?
Yeah.
And it's good to work that stuff out. It's invaluable.
I agree. I think that that we've had a little bit of pushback on, well, why include it on an experimentation tool for your business? And that's really at the heart of why there's value in having it on the canvas itself. Is as you change your business model, your fears are going to change, and understanding what is really like you said, the core of the fear, and writing it down, understanding where you should be navigating your business. As you iterate your business, you should be filling these business model canvases out each time, and really how, if I tweak this, where's my fear in that tweak? So on and so forth.
Totally.
And it becomes incredibly powerful to just have a big view and say, that's why I'm afraid.
Yep,
and I need to just, name it and move
it can
forward.
be stuff that's really under the surface and really powerful. And you can start with the higher level stuff, I'm afraid of looking silly on a session. And so I never take my camera off of manual or automatic or AV or whatever. Or I get really flustered when I'm using flash. So I'm not an expert at flash yet. And so I'm afraid of using flash on some of my shoots. Okay, well, that's good to be honest with yourself so that you can start answering the questions what tools do you need, and what what other things can you do to prepare yourself to really set yourself apart? Like if the question right above it, like what is uniquely me? Well, if you're not investing in yourself to learn the skills and other tools like off-camera flash or whatever it might be, right? Then it's harder and harder for you to define yourself as unique. If you're solving the same problems in the same way that the majority of other photographers are doing it.
Yeah, and I'd like to actually expand on that too, because that's like one of my favorite sections. We kind of had an aha moment when reading a book called The Brain Audit by Sean D'Souza, and he has a section in this book where he's talking about this whole concept of uniqueness.
Yeah.
And he talks about how people typically approach this concept by looking at, their past and trying to find something about themselves that is unique. Like, oh, I was always, like this when I was a kid. And so how can I incorporate that into my business?
Yeah.
Well, his whole point is that, we need to be creating our uniqueness. We need to find something that is of value to us, that's important to us, that's different from what other people are doing. And we're basically inventing something,
Right.
Which is really cool. And as artists, too, I think that that's pretty awesome. So, I mean, he shares some examples of Domino's is one of them. So the Domino's guy, he wanted to be the fastest at delivery. So they basically said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to deliver your pizza in 30 minutes or less. And that kind of became, how Domino's was known. We all know they're not known for having the best pizza.
Right.
They're known for having the delivery.
And then they've had to switch that. Like that's their latest ad campaign has been the reverse, where now they're more upfront with, okay, that worked to get us where we are.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is a good analogy of how this
is
canvas
changing.
needs to be ongoing, right?
Yep.
Where
Absolutely.
a certain strategy can get you to a place, but it's not necessarily going to get you to the next place.
Yep.
You might have to shake things up. And I think that with talking to a lot of experienced photographers, that's probably the biggest frustration they have, is they've been succeeding and doing really well, doing business a certain way,
Right.
solving a certain problem, doing it in a way that used to be unique to them, but now everybody copies me. Anything I do, everybody copies. Like, imitation's a really good form of flattery, right? Like,
Yeah.
That means yes, it is a drag, but guess what? There's no other business, there's no other industry where that's not happening. Like the speed of copycats, of imitation, of the way things are changing, that's happening in all industries. Like it's not
Absolutely.
only happening to us, right? That's just it's the way the world's way business is working today, and we can embrace it. Like we can embrace the fact that things are moving so quickly, that there are tools out there and solutions and training and education out there to help you change and evolve faster and stay ahead and actually, and not just stay ahead, but like continue to be you, to be just more you, to get more and more clear about what problems you want to solve and focus, becoming like hyper niched so that people can't really imitate you. Nobody can imitate your uniqueness, right?
Yeah. And I think, when we're talking about uniqueness, we're really talking about brand experience.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to understand what role that trust plays in that.
Yep.
Meaning, there's a book by Stephen M. R. Covey called The Speed of Trust.
Yes. I
And
love
he's
that
got
book.
this phenomenal equation that, he kind of has a variant of the old business equation, which is basically strategy times execution equals results.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, not really. It's more like strategy times execution multiplied by trust equals results.
Exactly.
He's saying that, what you're really experiencing is you either have a trust tax or you have a trust dividend in your brand. Meaning, if your potential client base really trusts you immensely,
Yes.
the speed of your business is going to go so much faster.
Yep.
If the trust wasn't there.
So true.
If you've developed a high trust brand, and that's really what is unique about you, is that you are, you've decided to, do only, boudoir or whatever it is, and your clientele, they trust you implicitly. They have developed a relationship with you implicitly, and you've developed a way for them to kind of be in connection with you outside of the session. You know, the shooting the session is just one piece of the trust experience.
So true.
So on and so forth. And so he's saying, Stephen is saying, if you've got high trust, your speed of your business goes up and your costs go down.
Everything.
But if you've got a low trust business, you know, the speed of your business is way down and your costs go up.
Yep.
And it's so important to understand the role that trust plays in your uniqueness and in your brand.
Yeah. That's really good. I love that book, and I love applying that to other situations. It's I see that coming up in businesses and other aspects of life. When trust is low, everything just gets to like this squeaky annoying. Like when you annoy or when you involve a lawyer into a situation, there's this implied mistrust in everybody. Yeah. And like the process of hiring employees or all this, like there's all of this implied mistrust, and the whole process just comes to this screeching halt. It's like, can we just get past this? Like, I'm used to like moving so fast. I love moving quickly because for better or worse, I assume trust in people until they give me a reason not to trust them. Yeah. For the most part, it's worked out all right. But because when it just allows you to move quicker, right? You can execute much faster when you just assume trust. But I think that in creating your brand and something that's uniquely you, if we go back to the beginning, the analogy of solving the problem for wedding customers, for brides and grooms, trust is so vital because there's so much unknown. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what they should be buying. They don't know how to like trust that they've found the right photographer, right? And if you have the skill set and the material and the rapport up front to start establishing that trust from the very beginning, from the very first phone call, from the first pre-session, from the engagement session, where they go into the wedding day and they're like so excited to not have to worry about photography, right? Think about how much easier and how much faster the rest of the process is when it comes time to ordering, when it's more like a celebration of I'm so glad you were at our party.
It is. And so that's what we tell our couples when we meet with them. Like our ideal couple is, you know, we want you to be as interested in taking the time to let us get to know you, because that's what we want to do. We want to feel like friends when we show up on your wedding day.
Totally.
Because we're going to know that you hold hands a certain way. Yep. And we're going to know like your little, you know, kind of quirky things that you guys do. We're going to be able to capture those things because we've spent time with you and gotten to know who you are.
Yeah.
Totally. Awesome. Well, this is fantastic, you guys. For everybody who wants to learn more, you can actually go download a PDF version of the Photographer's Business Model Canvas where you can actually type in it. It's really slick. So you can just start typing and capturing your notes on the fly. I recommend saving them off and giving them a date and plan on having multiple versions so you can come back to them, and it's always evolving. We added a link where you can go get that download from Tog Tools. Check out their stuff, guys. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. Let us know in the comments other questions you might have. Guys, go ahead and wrap up. What else do you guys have coming down the pipe that we should be watching for?
We're going to be launching a free course that basically breaks down the PBMC, the Photographer's Business Model Canvas, bit by bit, and really exposes the value in a more tangible way, kind of walking somebody through using the canvas and learning how to use it to iterate their business model.
Awesome.
And that's coming up here very, very shortly.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. You guys continue to follow Tog Tools. They've got some awesome interviews there, along with some other tools that I think are tremendous to helping you guys transition from thinking about your business to a business, and for those that are already there, to taking it up a notch and being even more effective in your business. So thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, have a good rest of the day. Cheers.